Hey guys, what's going on? So I want to dive in a little bit into why the Yankees have been so quiet. And it's very frustrating. Don't get me wrong, as a fan, as a content creator, and obviously the lockout is, partly responsible for a lot of this stuff, most of it. But Yankees in particular have been completely inactive before the lockout at the major league level. They've made some minor league signings, which could be impactful to a degree. They've obviously done their international spending. They brought in the number one international prospect, Rourke, as well as a bunch of other guys too. So that's great. But there are things and there are reasons why that the Yankees have been mostly inactive. And I'm not saying these are the only reasons. There could be other reasons too. But these could very well be significantly influential. So I want to go into it because there's things that aren't talked about or could be overlooked or that some folks don't even know about. And I want to go over them, because I think it's important. So, by the way, if this is your first time here, welcome. Please consider subscribing if you like stuff like this. But if you want to know everything into this lockout, after the lockout, free agency, breaking news, everything, you're going to find it all here. So subscribing to the channel is really helpful. And you're not only going to find out everything you need to know, but it's really helpful to the channel's growth, and it's greatly appreciated. So with that, let's get into this. So the collective bargaining threshold, which is the threshold at which teams start to pay penalties, this year was at $210 million. It's now expired, so the new collective bargaining agreement is going to bring new levels of it. And that's one of the things that the players' union and the owners are fighting over. So the players' union want that lower level to be at $245 million, working towards $260 over the next 5 years for the next CBA. The owners want it to be at $214, working up to $220. So they're miles apart. That's one reason why they haven't come to an agreement, as well as other reasons that we've talked about repeatedly. But that's one, and I want to kind of dive into that. And there are legs and arms that are attached to this that start to make more sense once you know about it. So, and again, this is essentially an unofficial salary cap, right? And it was created by the owners, this threshold. And, but it hasn't really created the competitive balance that they thought it was going to, or theoretically thought it was going to do. That hasn't happened. And again, this past year was $210 million. We'll see what the next level is. But that was the essential first threshold level for penalties. Now, this stuff, let's just say a player, and I want to add this too because this is part of it too. Let's just say a player signs a 5-year, $100 million contract, and he front loads it by $30 million, $30 million, and $30 million the first 3 years, which is $90 million, and then $5 million and $5 million. Or the other way around, backloads it, $30 million a year for the last 3 years and $5 million a year for the next 2 years. Front loading and backloading, it doesn't matter. It has absolutely no impact because the total number contract divided by the amount of years is the average annual value, which in this case is $20 million. That's the number that's going to be applied towards the payroll. Okay? Not 30 or 5 or whatever it is, doesn't matter. The overall number, their cash flow is impacted obviously, but the payroll is not. The payroll totals is what goes towards these threshold levels and penalties. So it's something to keep in mind, okay? And what's not included in this is a club option or a player option. That's considered or treated as a 1-year deal. So somebody like an Aaron Hicks, who's his contract goes $10 million a year for the next 4 years. And then he has a 2026 team option, okay? Which is, again, it's up to the team to exercise, or it is a $1 million buyout. So that's not included into any of this. So that's something that's up to the team. And player options are a little bit different, but they're still treated as 1-year deals as well. They're not as part of the life of the actual contract. So now, the penalties that have been imposed as fines, okay? For a first-time offender over that threshold. And keep in mind, how many teams go over the threshold? Yankees, Dodgers, the Cubs have done it, the Red Sox are kind of regulars, the Mets are over it now. There's a handful of teams. So these teams are the ones that are most directly affected by this. But a first-time offender pays a 20% penalty for every dollar spent over the threshold. If it happens again the following year, that penalty goes up to 30% if the team is a repeat offender. And if they're a repeat offender for the third year, it goes up to 50%. Okay, so every dollar spent over the threshold is taxed at or penalized at these percentages if they're repeat offenders. If they go back under and reset, then they go back to a first-time offender again. So just like the Yankees have done, they would be a first-time offender this coming year if they go over the threshold. So something to keep in mind, okay? Now, there are other things that are attached to this that people don't know about. There's a surcharge, okay? And If they exceed it by $20 million, so let's just say we'll stick it to 210 and they go to 230, right? Not only do they pay the 20% for being a first-time offender, they pay an additional 12% surcharge. Yeah, 12% for exceeding it by 20 million. If you exceed it by 40 million, it goes to 42.5%. If you exceed it by 40 million again the following year, it goes to 45%. Additional surcharge on top of the penalties that are already paid. So it can come up to tens of millions of dollars of penalties paid by these teams. So additionally, any team that goes over $40 million, and it hasn't really happened that often, the Mets are over it this year. So right now, well, it really depends on what the new threshold is. So if they're at about 270 right now. So if the threshold's 230, they'll be over it. There's also a forfeit. Well, there's also a draft pick impact here. And what happens is if you're over 40 million, your first round draft pick, if it's not picked within picks 1 through 6, goes down by 10 spots. So if you pick, let's just say you're picking at 10, that goes down to 20. Let's say you're picking at 10 pick in the second round, that goes down 10 spots too. So your first 2 picks drop by 10 spots each. And keep that in mind, using the Yankees as an example, that could have cost them Anthony Volpe and Trey Sweeney. They wouldn't have gotten either because of the areas that they were picked. And the Yankees generally pick around, the second half of the draft pretty much every year because they're a competitive team and are mostly in the playoffs. So they're always going to be picking in the back part of the rounds anyway. But these are the guys that are affected. And again, they're trying to build a team with free agents, role players, and a boatload of draft picks. So, and they've done a good job at developing a good pipeline of them over the last several years of shortstops, and they're starting to build center field. And I am of the opinion that they need to build a catching pipeline too, so that there's that straight line up the middle. So not only are they the most athletic and versatile players, but they're also the most tradable assets, desirable assets in trade. I mean, look what the Yankees are looking for this offseason: shortstop, center field, and catching. Up the middle, all 3 of them. So I wanted to give you some insight into that. And these are the details directly from the CBA. Now, it could change now. With the new collective bargaining agreement, these numbers might vary, but these have been the existing numbers for the last collective bargaining agreement. So, and again, the Yankees are one of the teams that are most directly affected by this because they're also giving out revenue sharing, parts of their profits for small market teams like the Tampa Bay Rays. They're giving Tampa Bay money so that they could be more competitive and beat the Yankees. I mean, they're essentially helping them extend Wander Franco to that 12-year deal. So it's stuff like that. And these other things that are kind of layered in there are partly the reason why the Yankees have done nothing, because they don't know what the new collective bargaining agreement is going to look like yet. And I understand, and I've been guilty of it too, saying, well, they should spend, because they are swimming in profit, and they can't cry poverty with any credibility at all. They're the most profitable, most valuable franchise in all of baseball. Forbes confirms it every single year. And they have a network, the Yes Network, which is basically the almost equal value of the team. So they're up at almost $10 billion. $10 billion. So that's a lot of money. And they make hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of profits every year. So they can afford to spend. They can afford to do whatever they want. But I could also see the logic where not wanting to lose draft picks, because draft picks help them offset certain payroll components to stay within some kind of reasonable parameter. Maybe not wanting to exceed it every single year or being over the threshold, whatever it is. I get it. But I think it's important that, we all understand, have a better idea of what this stuff means and how it impacts our Yankees. I don't really care how it affects other teams. I care about how it affects the Yankees. So hope you found this impactful, helpful. If you did, hit the thumbs up. If you enjoyed it, obviously, give me some feedback in the comments. And again, if you're new here, please consider subscribing to the channel. I want to spread this to a broader community in the baseball fan world. And it's greatly appreciated. I'll keep you filled in on everything going on, especially after the lockout when all the breaking news starts to come out. Talk to you guys next time. Have a good week.